So our last question is, how much time am I allowed to look over the offer of FAPE? They are telling me if I don't sign within 10 business days, they are allowed to implement without
I love this one.
without my signature. Is that true?
Okay, liar, liar, your pants are on fire. It's not true. Okay, here's the way it works. The district constructs an IEP that is supposed to contain, parental input. And sometimes you get the IEP back and there are, more like statistical errors or problems, and oftentimes it doesn't accurately reflect what the service offer is, and also it mischaracterizes the discussion. You are allowed to have time to review the IEP and respond to it. You are allowed to take a reasonable time. To me, that would be 30 days. I've been really bad in the last year when I've been busy, and sometimes I haven't done responses for 3 months afterwards. That's terrible. It's bad practice. It shouldn't happen. It's much harder to remember. But my point is, a district is only going to be able to file for due process against you and get a right to implement the IEP if you haven't responded in a reasonable time. And I would say you'd be well within your rights if you took 30 to 45 days to respond. And I think you could write them a letter that says, I'm reviewing the IEP, I am going to respond to you, I'll respond by X date, but as part of my deliberative process, I need to consider what changes I'm going to request the IEP. Now, when you sign an IEP, they have a little box that says I consent or something like that. They don't exactly, and sometimes it says I consent to everything except. What they don't tell you is that you can consent to the implementation of the IEP, but you can object to eligibility, unique needs, goals, services in part or whole, but you can say, I don't think your behavior services offer is FAPE because I think he needs a 1-to-1 aid, not a 3-to-1 aid, but I'll consent for purposes of implementation. And so that's you can protect yourself in that way. You can give them permission to implement some or all of it. There's a California statute that basically says, and this is California only, it's not federal, if the parent doesn't believe certain portions of the IEP are appropriate to provide a FAPE, they don't have to consent to those parts, and the district can implement the rest. And then it says that the district, if it feels that partial implementation of the IEP is not sufficient to provide a FAPE, then they can file for an order to implement the whole IEP. I've done partial consents for years. I've never had a district object to a partial consent in that way. So they're giving you misinformation. Typically, like lawyer to lawyer, if we haven't signed an IEP and the time is getting kind of long, oftentimes the other lawyer will write me a question and say, hey, do you intend to respond or sign the IEP? And that's kind of my little first warning that they need me to do something, because at some point they are going to, have to either get you to consent to implementation but not concede FAPE, or they're going to have you do something, because they're concerned that if the state comes down and looks at the IEP and sees that it's out there and it's not being implemented, they're going to be concerned about that, and they're going to come down on the district. But this 10 days stuff,
it's
crazy. Makes me want to stand on my head or something.
Absolutely.
Because it's really not accurate, and it's really unfortunate when people are being aggressive with parents and they're lying to parents. Like, doesn't everybody remember from religious school when they were kids, it's bad to lie? We shouldn't be lying. We shouldn't be lying to parents who have kids with disabilities that are working really hard to try to educate their kids, so.
Well, and often I think how they justify it, Bonnie, is that they'll say, this is our policy that we like to have it done 10 days. And the thing that I've seen as a parent is that they'll provide me with some random rule that they came up with because they're trying to be productive. And I like to remind them, I'm sure that that's your rule, but that's not my rule. That's not a rule that I have to follow. That's your internal rule. Thank you for making that rule for yourselves. It doesn't involve me.
But Shannon, they can have policies, but they can't have policies that contravene people's rights under IDEA.
That's
and
the
I
thing.
think this policy is in that category.
Absolutely. Bonnie, I always love the sense and the common sense that you bring to things, and it's aptly named, your rights, so that we have the opportunity to know what our rights are. I appreciate you so much being here, and I apologize because we got to you a little bit late